G'day fixers, it's DIY time again, and I am going to be attempting to replace some skirting boards or baseboards for you in the Northern Hemisphere at my sister's place. She's requested me to do it and I am a handyman, so I should, right? Except I've never done it before. And that's what this video is going to be about. It is not a how-to, because I learned a hell of a lot along the way and made a lot of mistakes, which I'm going to share with you. This is a first-time experience and me encouraging you to have a crack. You can get an acceptable result, as long as you're a little bit careful. More careful than me anyway. But, as I didn't know what I was doing, I checked in with someone who does, and popped straight over to YouTube to check out my mate Shane from diyforknuckleheads. He's a builder, and he knows a thing or two about coping and skirting boards.
Ever wondered how to do those pesky internal corners on your skirting boards? So what do you need? First of all, a coping saw. You'll also need a compound miter saw, which is one of these babies.
See, now the thing is, my miter saw weighs an absolute ton. It's like 36 kilos, so that's 80 or 90 pounds, I think. It doesn't move easily, it is bolted to my bench, it's lined up nicely, so I made the executive decision not to bring it. That's gonna come back to bite me. I also don't own a coping saw, which are really cheap, affordable absolutely everywhere, and could have been acquired in about 5 minutes at my local big box shop, but I decided, nah, I'm gonna use a circular saw and a jigsaw, because more power's better, right? No, it's not. So this is what we're dealing with. I only have that single external corner, but about 5 of these internal corners because of the built-in wardrobe and things. I also have 2 different surfaces, that lovely 1970s wood shiplap paneling and regular old plasterboard. The wood's not too difficult, the plasterboard was trickier for me. Step 1, removing the old cedar skirting boards. There were not too many tack nails in here, mostly it was adhesive, so I had to run all the way along the edges trying to find the dollops of glue that were holding these wooden boards to the plasterboard and try and break all of them off so that I could then lever very carefully the old skirting boards off. These weren't going to be reused, we had some nice shiny new ones my brother-in-law had picked up from the big box store. So after I'd broken all the adhesive, I was trying to get a screwdriver under there, and then we found an old curtain rail that had a hook on it. A jemmy bar would be better, but this actually worked surprisingly well. And I was able to very gently pry away the old board without too much damage. These boards were running the whole length of the wall, and so you don't bash them into things. Once you've freed them, just get a small saw and cut them in half. It's so much easier to handle that way. And as you can see, I got most of the glue off. But yeah, we missed 1 or 2 and ended up taking a few chunks out of the wall. So do double check or you will be damaging your plaster a lot and have to patch that hole. And of course, even though most of the glue came off, some of it was still there. So the new one would sit flush. Get your scraper, go along the wall, and try to make that as flat as you can. Make sure you suck up all the debris with the vac. Pulled out the spack filler, quick drying stuff. You're never going to see this, but I thought it best to fill the holes. And no, that was not the last time I was going to need spack filler for the day. Now on the plaster, another tool I was missing was a stud finder. When you put your tack nails in, you want to put them into the wooden beam behind the plaster, and that's not everywhere. So I just used the back of my awl, listened very carefully, and found the solid bits, which were going to be the studs, and then marked those out with tape. Now typically, I think they were meant to be 300mm apart or something like that, and some of them were. And many of them weren't. I am not sure who built this place. It may have been owner built, and for whatever reason, the spacings of the studs were absolutely all over the shop. But I think I found most of them. Here is something ripped directly off Shane from diyforknuckleheads. Again, go check him out if you haven't already. He's an absolute champion. The bottom of your plasterboards often curves in, and you'll find that when you put a square up against there, that it's not going to be level with the rest of the wall. So Shane suggested putting a little nail, little clout in here, because you'll see when I'm putting the new board up, down the bottom, there's going to be movement, which is going to kick it inwards. So in the corners, to avoid that kick, just put that little space of a nail head and it will make them sit closer to 90 degrees. Great tip, Knackers! See, this is where you should be using a miter saw. This cut's not too bad. Circular saws do 90-degree cuts very well. Try to have the piece supported on both sides, or have a friend holding the other end, when you are trimming down the pieces to length. You'll notice that on this first piece, we are trimming it at 90 degrees. Pick the wall that your eye is going to be drawn to, and this one you can safely cut off perfectly square. You'll see why in a moment. Then, because I hate the next person who's going to come in and renovate this place, I decided to use far too much liquid nails on the back of my new skirting boards, because I did not want these to come off or peel away from the wall. Once the adhesive was there, I checked my level and ensured that with my little tack gun, we got in on those studs that we marked out earlier to hold everything nice and tight. I'm not going to show it in this video. It will be my brother-in-law's job to come back later, fill those holes, and touch up his lovely paint job. He did pre-paint these skirting boards, which will save a lot of backbreaking work at ground level later on. I think it's easier to do that and just fix up the damage you do installing them than it is to paint the damn things while they're in place. Now we're starting to see some of the struggles that you will have if you, like me, don't bring yourself a miter saw. I am trying to cut a 45-degree scarfing joint. A scarfing joint is when the boards are not long enough to run the full length of the wall and you need to join two of them. Now, if you're clever, you might be able to position that joint behind a piece of furniture or the bed or something, and of course you want to have that joint right on one of the studs. You cut an open 45 and a closed 45, and it looks like this. Where did I go wrong, Shane?
James, listen up, as I'm only going to tell you this once. Don't use a circular saw to cut your scarfing joints or your internal corners on your skirting boards, as it's just not accurate enough and you'll finish up with a dog's breakfast.
For reference, here's a perfectly good scarfing joint that I cut when I was building my lovely workbench back in the workshop. The circular saw, mind the pun, just won't cut it. Use a miter saw. While we contemplate that horrendousness, if you'd like to see some good woodworking, then I highly recommend Barber's Paddock Woodworking. Anthony only started the hobby and making videos relatively recently, and already the quality of his production and his woodwork, I believe, exceeds my own. He also became a top tier member of the Fixit Fingers channel recently, and for that he gets this shout out. There is a link below if you would like to join up and get into the action as well. Thank you so much for that, mate. Go give him a subscription, you will not be disappointed. Okay, now the main event and the scariest part of skirting board installation, coping the internal corners. Shane's video goes through this in the detail that you need to do this successfully. I understood it in theory, the execution was something else. Short version, do an open 45 cut on the board you want to slide into the corner, make a 90-degree cut along the flat section of your moulding, and then this is where you should be using a coping saw. So what you are attempting to do is to follow that lip of the open cut along the tricky moulding section, undercutting it slightly. The jigsaw does work, and after I practiced 4 or 5 of them, I was getting okay at it, but I do think that for a beginner particularly, the little hand coping saw is going to be much easier and give you better results. So let's cross back to Uncle Knackers and see exactly how a professional would do this job.
Now the best way to do it, which is used by carpenters all over the world, is just to use your miter saw, which will give you a beautiful straight cut, and then finish it off with a coping saw for all those fancy bits. Just set your saw to 45 degrees and away you go. And boom. That's how you do it, mate. Forget that circular saw business. Easy peasy, lemon squeezy.
Cheers, Uncle Knackers. Well, I'll keep that one away for next time, but here is the result I was able to achieve with my circ saw and jigsaw. Not as pretty, but I'll take it in this circumstance. Let's just say my brother-in-law measured very well, as they are the only offcuts that I had left at the end of the job. I only had the one external corner to do, and it was a simple 45 job that looked like that. It came out acceptable. The rest of it was okay. My horrible scarf joint notwithstanding, it was a great improvement on the old stuff. For your reference, even though I was filming a bit, this job took me 6 hours to do, so most of a day. With the proper tools and a bit of practice, I'm sure you can cut that down immensely. But for me, I'll take this as a learning experience, and I hope some of my stuff-ups will assist you if you ever attempt this job in your place, and you'll be aware of some of the shortcuts to avoid. This is James from Fixit Fingers. I'll catch you on the next one.